Hey, wait, I want a picture with Joanne, too. Everyone else gets one of those, huh? Anyway, it's great to be here this morning. You know, some of you are sleeping at this time of the morning, and usually I am too. But on this particular day, on Fridays, I'm usually working out at 7:30 in the morning in Chicago. And Chicago's a pretty small town. And for years, I've worked out at this small trainer's gym in the West Loop of Chicago, kind of dingy, dark place, with the same workout partner. And we did the same workouts every morning, ran on the treadmill, lifted weights, did the same thing, got exhausted together, laughed, kidded around, passed out. So one day I was looking up at TV. This is probably after working out 3 or 4 years with her. And I saw my workout partner, and I said, Michelle? Who knew her last name was Obama? So my point is, you never know who you're sitting next to. So I want everyone to introduce themselves to the person next to you, because you may just be sitting next to the next First Lady. Please take a minute. All right. Now, let me know if you figured it out, because I want to meet her too. So let me ask you this. I want to start with a little audience participation. I'd like to hear from you what comes to mind when you think of a good company. When you think of like the best companies in this country, which companies come to mind when you think of a good company? Any suggestions? You could yell them out. Yes?
I worked for one for a long time, Federal Express.
Federal Express, okay. And why do you say they're a good company?
Well, they're obviously a great company from a customer relations standpoint, but more importantly from an employer relations standpoint.
Okay, so they take good care of their employees. Who else? Yes, ma'am. Zappos. Why are they good? Yeah, my wife's with you. All right. Who else comes to mind? Yes?
S.C. Johnson. They've been a family company, still held by a family for over 125 years, and they've been on the Fortune Best 10 out of the last 11 years.
Okay, great. Any other suggestions? Yes?
I didn't get paid to say this, but I will say the Emergence. As a woman, I am proud to say we truly practice what we preach, and all of our degrees are paid for as part of our benefits. So I'm proud to say that I go every year and I get my mammogram.
I think that's great. I'm with you. Well, I think that, I went and spoke to a lot of companies over the last year on a speaking tour, and I spoke to Google just at the end of last year in December, and they said, we're a socially responsible company, Jason. We believe in doing good. We're a great company. And I looked at their corporate tagline. Anyone know what Google's corporate tagline is? Do no evil. And I said to them, really? Is that the best we can do? Is not be bad? And that's the thing today. Any 30 Rock fans, right? The Scheinheimer Wig Company, this is sort of like a joke of a T-shirt, but this is how we define doing good today. We're not bad. We don't mistreat our employees. We don't pollute. Hey, we're reducing our carbon. In fact, you could get a plastic water bottle and see that the cap is a little bit smaller. And they're green. But the fact of the matter is, all we're really doing is making the world less worse. It's not like we're planting any new trees by being green. We're just polluting a little less. I remember working with Levi Strauss, and they were so excited they were coming out with their corporate responsibility report, and they said, Jason, we've audited every one of our factories, And we put them through a rigorous screening of these special standards for outsourced manufacturing and apparel conditions. And we can tell you that none of our employees have been mistreated, and there are no kids in any of our factories. And I remember saying to them, like, no one's going to congratulate you for not having kids in your factories, right? Just don't do that. But I don't know why we're bragging about that. I submit to you, I love this picture. I submit to you that we very well may have set the bar too low. If all we're asking of our companies is to prove that they're not bad. Give some money to charity. Don't be bad. Don't mistreat people. Be good to women. Be good to minorities. Be good to our the people who work in our workplace. I think we can do so much more. And where's John, who introduced us this morning? Is he still here? There he is. So, I mean, I think that's the greatest introduction ever, right? Because this is about raising the bar, reaching higher. Yes, we can sign up for a race. Yeah, we can screen some people. But I think we can do more. And what my research has shown by working with, by studying dozens of Fortune 500 companies is that there is a set of practices and innovations that some companies are using that are blowing away that bar. And the standard is also shifting. Because today, we operate in a fundamentally different environment than we did only yesterday. Yes, the economy, yes, the deficit, all of these things. But the fact of the matter is, the business model of the nonprofit sector, the business model of so many companies is fundamentally resetting because the conditions are so severe. Last year, the government, the federal government, rang up $1.6 trillion in debt. But last year, in the third quarter alone, corporations generated $1.5 trillion in profit. If you want to know where the money is for social change in America, it's sitting right here. We have the power and the resources to solve social problems. And today, we also have the mandate. Because the fact of the matter is, one of the byproducts of this reset world is that social outcomes now have real economic value. It's not just a nice thing to do anymore. I mean, we see real economic benefits in solving some of these social problems. And companies cannot compete without social change. We cannot hire the people we need without creating an emotional bond or providing opportunities to make a difference. Boeing can't build more airplanes without more engineers. I was just up in Canada yesterday, and there's a huge company up there called Synovus, which in order to meet their growth targets, they have to hire 100,000 people in the next 5 years. How are they going to possibly do that with most kids in the Aboriginal regions of Canada barely completing 8th grade? Social issues now have real economic value. And we're feeling pain, literally, when those problems aren't solved. My wife has friends who are paying $25,000 a year for kindergarten. We are in pain. And the fact of the matter is that pain provides huge opportunity for business. Not just by being good and being nice and not being bad, but by seizing on that. Because the fact is we can use the resources of business to solve social problems and grow and benefit. And the second takeaway from the reset world, this emergence of something called the social capital market, where social issues have economic value, is that it is okay now to expect an economic return from doing good. Anyone ever go online at kiva.org or hear about that website, right? What do you do there? micro-entrepreneurs in developing country. You can give them a loan for $500 or $200, and you get your money back, sometimes with 30% interest. And that's philanthropy today. I mean, on the south side of Chicago, that'll get you an indictment, right? But for Muhammad Yunus, that'll get you a Peace Prize. The fact is, we have changed the nature of philanthropy today. Everybody is giving money, and there are new ways to give. We don't have to just do charity. We can invest in solving social problems. No one's criticizing Toyota for selling a for-profit Prius. We're celebrating them. So how do we stop congratulating companies for spending 1% of their pre-tax profits on charity and tap into the other 99% to be able to truly solve these social problems today? So here's the other phenomenon that I see. We have a big problem inside companies. Because in this reset world, many of the companies that are investing in social change are also looking for a return from that investment. There's sessions here today on the ROI from wellness and things like that. In order to invest the resources we need to solve these problems, we have to be able to measure and demonstrate an appreciable impact on the business. And this startled me when I saw this research from McKinsey. It said, when they surveyed CFOs and investors, they asked, do you expect that your CSR, your corporate social responsibility, generates value for the business? 56% of CFOs and investors said, yes, we expect that it will generate business value. Yet when we surveyed CSR professionals, 51% of them said, oh, that's a problem. Because if the market expects us to generate business value from our social interventions, but we don't know if we are, we probably aren't. And the fact is, we have moved from a social contract era where our obligations to society were twofold. One, don't be bad. So don't pollute, don't mistreat workers, don't do bad things. And two, be good. And give some money to charity. Sponsor a nonprofit. Do some volunteering. But the fact of the matter is today, from my research, there is no appreciable reputational benefit from doing good. It just looks really bad if you're not. Right? But the fact is, reputation only matters in the negative around social change. If you screw up like a BP, you're in big trouble. But all the companies that are doing good, the fact is everybody's doing good. Every company that's in the Fortune 500 is giving money to charity. Every company is green. Every company has a social responsibility report. Every company has a volunteer day. So reputation doesn't matter when everybody's doing the same thing. We need to raise the bar beyond just perfunctory reputational hits and find a way to have meaningful business value through social change. And we can do it. This is the shift that I see. The social contract was, the underlying implicit contract between corporations and society that says, in return for the right to reap profits, you have to give back and don't be bad. Today, that's the baseline for being in big business. Every company is abiding by the social contract. You can't get into the game of big business without meeting those minimum standards. But there's a new set of expectations today in this social capital market where social problems are affecting businesses. And there is a tremendous opportunity in the social capital market. From my research, it is a $6 trillion market. This is the market of people, companies, and investors that are looking to purchase social impact, that are putting economic value on social impact. It's the $23 billion a year that we are spending on corporate social responsibility. It's the $230 billion a year that low-cost consumers, lifestyles of health and sustainability consumers, are spending on sustainable and healthy products and services. It's the $500 billion a year that we are spending in the U.S. on buying educational outcomes for our kids. It's the $2 trillion a year that's being invested in socially responsible investments. There is a tremendous amount of money swirling around this social capital market that we are missing by focusing on the low bar of just not being bad and doing some nice stuff. So you all are in a position to help your companies see the possibility of how do we create value for the business through solving social problems. And I want to share with you a couple frameworks and then some examples of how this is happening today. So this notion of shared value that's out there today, or what I call high value outcomes, is where I want us to all stretch, to reach up and try to seize. There's charity. Great, we can make donations, and we absolutely should. And there's more strategic types of philanthropy that I see that has higher social value because we're aligning it with the business. But the really high value outcomes are the ones where our company has a business reason to solve this problem, where there is a business motivation to solve this. So we need to start to think about what is the economic reason why we want to approach issues like cancer. What is the benefit to our business? How do we justify spending more than the minimum resources to invest in this? Where is the economic value and the social value that we can achieve together? We're living today in a very different world. It's all about charity or it's all about business. We can do both because most of the social issues we face have real economic impact. I mean, think about it. Chocolate. I'm a big fan. Kraft is the largest manufacturer of chocolate now in the world. They bought Cadbury. They have a business problem because they source 70% of their cocoa from one place, the Ivory Coast. And last I checked, that place is a mess. So they're trying to invest in alternative sources of cocoa, and there's all these charities that are trying to help smallholder farmers create new sources of income and get out of poverty. Why don't we start having them make cocoa? There are ways to do both, but we need to think differently. How many righties are in the room? How many right-handed people are in the room? Okay, that's a lot. How many lefties do we have? All right, maybe about 10. Now, how many people do we have that are ambidextrous? Right there and there. Tell me your name. Liz. So Liz, today is about you. I want us to start being more like Liz. Because the only way that we are going to be able to achieve high-value outcomes is if we start thinking ambidextrously. How do we do both? Help the business and help society. Now, the way we used to do that was a very sort of superficial way. Hey, we're doing good, and we're going to give to charity, and we're going to help some nonprofits, and that's going to make us look good, and then more people want to come here, and more people want to work here. Or we're going to give money to education, and because it's a better workforce in society, we might have some workers who come work for us, and then we'll all be better off. Those sort of pat, ratiocinated, 5 times removed answers don't cut it anymore. We need to produce direct value for our businesses if we want to tap into real resources. And we need to start to figure out how do we tap into the engine of the business rather than living off the fumes of the business to solve some of these social problems. So I challenge you to move from a world of CSR 1.0, where we are doing charity and we're not being bad, or even strategic philanthropy, to what I call social innovation, which is leveraging the engine of the business to solve social problems. This is another one of my favorite pictures, right? But the fact is, when we talk about 1% for charity, 1% to give back, that's the fumes of the business. I want the 99% to go after cancer. I want to be able to use the real resources of the business, the core capabilities of our firms to solve these problems and to find a business reason to do so. Think about the leverage we have sitting here today. Just Fortune 500 firms alone employ 24 million people. Imagine if the American Cancer Society could make all 500 of those firms cancer ready. And imagine if we defined a threshold for what that meant that was more than just doing a walkathon or contributing to an event, but meeting some minimum threshold of signing a pledge and having everyone involved in a screening program and everyone participating in a wellness program and everyone meeting some minimum threshold that effectively inoculates them against the likelihood of cancer. We could change the world. McDonald's has 80 million people a month walk through their door. That's 1 billion people a year. Imagine if there was a business motivation, a business benefit that they were convinced of to attack a social issue like this, and I'm talking to them about this right now. They could change the world. We can change the world, but we have to start thinking about it not as fumes and as charity and something nice to do, but as part of our core business. So here's the definition of social innovation. 1, we start thinking about our social strategies as an intentional business strategy, a profit-seeking strategy. 2, it leverages the core business, not just volunteers to go clean up a beach one day, but our core competencies, our R&D capabilities, our marketing and branding capabilities, our product innovation skills, our delivery mechanisms. 3rd, it generates a real financial return for the business. And 4th, it produces a positive social change. Right? It's not just reducing a negative, it's creating a positive. So here are some examples. I went to Walmart. We worked with them a year ago on their new social strategy for eradicating hunger. And they said to me, Jason, well, we want to be able to measure the impact of some cause marketing that we might want to do. And I said, well, why do you want to do cause marketing? And they said, well, we're trying to improve our reputation because everyone hates us now. And in fact, a lot of people still do, right? And they spent $400 million a year on charity at Walmart. Do you know that? $400 million a year. And I gave a speech a year ago to a conference called Net Impact, a lot of socially responsible MBA students. And I started the speech by asking, how many people in the room hate Walmart? And like out of a size of a room like this, maybe 15 people raised their hands. And I said, well, let me tell you this. Now, last year, Walmart gave $400 million to charity. Now, how many people hate Walmart? 16 people raised their hand. It had no impact on the business. Nobody cared. It was just the right thing to do. Yeah, they could have given away $380 million or $250 million, and nobody cared. Doing charity is the right thing to do. It is not a business strategy. And so many companies have hired us or asked me to come in and consult around how do we know what the benefit to the business of doing charity is. It's just the right thing to do. There is no business benefit. There isn't. But when I went to Walmart, I brought their executives down to the first floor in their lobby, and they had all these plaques against the wall of their major milestones of accomplishments. And the last plaque was their $4 generic prescription drug program. And I said, that has had more of an impact on healthcare than any grant to a hospital research foundation from your charity. You are using the engine of your business to solve social problems. They have increased access to healthcare for millions of people. They have saved billions of dollars on healthcare costs by using the engine of their business, the machinery of their business, to solve a social problem. And oh, by the way, they've generated billions of dollars of income because of it. That is social innovation. Dow was another great example. I was out there last month, and I had just gotten back coincidentally from working with the U.S. Olympic Committee on how do we measure the impact of the Olympics. There's a question for you. How do we know whether we're going to win more gold medals in 2012 was the question that we had to discuss. But Dow last year became a $100 million investor in the Olympics. They invested $100 million in owning the rights to innovations that came out of the Olympics. New polymers, new chemicals, new applications for sports, technologies, new ways of building and constructing things. They expect to generate $1 billion in revenues from that investment. This is not charity or a nice thing to do to get their executives tickets to London. This is a business strategy, and they took the head of their automotive team and made him CEO of this initiative. It is a business strategy. GE, under Jeffrey Immelt, will tell you the most important word in corporate social responsibility is corporate. Right? You got to make a profit. This has to benefit the business. So they invested $6 billion in inventing 100 new innovations in healthcare that will lower the cost of healthcare, increase access to healthcare, and reduce costs. And they estimate in their press release announcing this initiative that it will generate revenues equal to 2 to 3 times the GDP of the United States for them. This is social innovation. This is leveraging the power of the business to make social change and to solve social problems. Here's another great example I profiled in one of my books. An initiative called Tonic. And WellPoint looked at the uninsured not as a charitable problem. Yeah, they gave some money to charity to help increase access, but they said we could use our business to solve this problem. So they studied the market, and they found out that the largest percentage of uninsured in this country were what they call the young invincibles, right? Kids who were like 19 to 29 who felt, you know, we don't need to bother with health care insurance. You know, we're skateboarders, we're snowboarders, we'll bang ourselves up, but we'll be fine. But what they found was that it wasn't that these kids didn't want insurance, they just didn't think it was worth it. So they studied this market and created a new product called Tonic, which is $79 a month for full health care coverage, full dental, full vision, full preventive care visits. And they excluded things that were overly expensive that kids said that were important, like having kids, covering pregnancy. They have a deductible that's maybe $5,000. It wasn't ridiculous. And they have signed up, in the last 2 years, 780,000 formerly uninsured people to buy Tonic. They have made a fabulous amount of money by solving a social problem. We can do this, but we need to raise our bar and think more creatively. We also need to think about what we're measuring, because the fact is we can say that we are getting more active, or that we're screening some people, or we're giving money to the American Cancer Society, but does it answer this question? Does it really answer the so what question? Are we really making a social impact? Are we really benefiting the business, or are we just saying so? And we can tell better stories and measure better things. I remember working with one Fortune 500 company, and the head of CSR and corporate citizenship was so excited that last year, their company had so much participation in volunteering. And they went into the CEO's office and they said, hey, John, guess what? Last year, we had 400,000 hours of volunteering. Isn't that amazing? And the CEO looked at him and said, that's just 400,000 hours that people aren't working. Why would I get excited about that? We're in a turnaround here. What's the problem? The business doesn't speak the language of doing good. So we need to translate what we're doing into business benefits. And when we worked on how to better define that, we translated volunteering, which the business doesn't know or care about as a metric, into a business metric of highly engaged employees. And we defined it by employees that were volunteering at least 2 to 3 times a year, that were actively participating in the employee giving program, and that were on a community involvement team. Because that showed that employees bought into the values of the business and were more likely to be retained and more likely to be highly engaged. And so we started measuring what percentage of our employees were highly engaged employees, which will work harder, be more productive, and stay longer. And then we went back to the CEO and said, you know what, we're about 20% of employees that are highly engaged, and by the end of the year, we want to be at 50% highly engaged employees. And he loved it, because we spoke the language of the business. I remember working with McDonald's a couple years ago on Ronald McDonald House, and we were measuring the impact of Ronald McDonald House for the business. And they said, well, we're just doing this because it's the right thing to do. And then Super Size Me hit. And Fast Food Nation hit, and obesity claims hit, and it became a mess. And they said, we've got a major problem with trust. People don't trust our brand. We need to show that moms in particular trust our brand more than others. So we did some research with Ronald McDonald House and McDonald's. And we found that of moms that knew about Ronald McDonald House or knew someone who had been helped by the Ronald McDonald House, those moms were 2 to 3 times more likely to revisit the store than those who didn't know. Based on that, the company put 8 figures more money into the program. We can sell our impact, but we have to measure things that are more meaningful, not only for the business, but also things that are more meaningful for society. I want to challenge us to raise the bar not only on our strategy, but also on our measurement. Because a lot of what we measure today are the activities. How many people signed up for a run? How many people got screened? How many people picked up a brochure? But does that answer the so what question? And measurement is tough, right? I'm not making any pretense about how easy this is. I remember giving a speech at Kellogg to a class of mine, and one of the nonprofit leaders in the class raised her hand. She said, Jason, you know, I hear what you're saying about measurement, and I get that, but you don't understand. I mean, we're doing God's work, and you can't measure what we do. I mean, we're taking prostitutes off the street and putting them in affordable housing, trying to help them get back into society. I mean, you just can't measure that. And I said, well, you know, it's interesting. They taught us back in Sunday school that God measured his own work, right? I mean, he built the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. So we know the benchmark for building a world is 6, right? I mean, if he can measure what he's doing, you can measure what you're doing. So I want to raise the bar for our measurement and encourage us to come up with proxies for measuring higher value outcomes. How do we know if someone in our company is cancer ready? How do we know if we've inoculated them effectively against the risks of cancer? And I've spent a lot of time measuring youth smoking prevention programs. And it's really hard to measure prevention because you don't know whether someone's going to do something in 5 or 10 years. But the innovation that we came up with in measuring that was to turn it around and say, well, a lot of the programs now are not about deficit-based approaches, they're about strength-based. Positive youth development, teaching these kids about having positive adult role models and being involved in after-school sports and having structured after-school activities, and that will, the research shows from the Search Institute that if we build those developmental assets in kids, that we will effectively inoculate them against the likelihood of doing risky behaviors, including smoking and drugs. So we measured how many kids had those developmental assets, how many kids reached that threshold of being inoculated against smoking. We don't need to wait 10 years and see if they smoke. We know that 80% of the kids that have those protective factors are protected against the risk of smoking. We can do the same thing in our efforts here. We can work with the American Cancer Society to define what does it mean to be effectively inoculated against the risks of cancer. What is the most that we could have our employees do to inoculate them against these risks? And not just have them do one thing or another, but have them check off the criteria that meets a cancer-ready company. And we can reach 24 million people. We can change the world. But we have to raise the bar. And that requires us sometimes moving our strategies further out on the frontier to achieve higher value outcomes. Because what we really want to say is we've cured this thing. You know, my mom had breast cancer. I don't want to see another person have it. But I don't want to just say that I did something good because I got screened or I went on a run. I got to do that, I know, because we got to fund the research and support the organizations that are fighting this. But we need to do more if we really want to feel like we are solving the problem. So I challenge you to innovate. And the first lesson I ever learned about innovation, I learned from my dad, actually. And when I was a kid, he told me a story about my great uncle, a guy named Emanuel Mertinger, who was a very famous chemist in Germany in the 1940s. And he got captured during the Holocaust. And they made him into a day laborer at one of the worst concentration camps, Auschwitz. And at night, they had him tend bar. And, you know, he was a chemist, so he started messing around, and he started making his own beer. And it turned out to be pretty good beer. And the Nazis loved his beer. And every night they'd come and they'd drink Emmanuel's beer, and he kind of became somewhat of a cult hero there. And one night, one of the Nazi soldiers got drunk. And they put a gun to his head. And they said, Emmanuel, you give me the recipe to the beer, or I'll blow your brains out. And I remember saying to my dad, so, Dad, what did he do? My dad said, well, Jason, if he gave him the recipe to the beer, they'd kill him. They don't need him anymore. And if he didn't give him the recipe to the beer, they'd kill him anyway for not following orders. So I said, Dad, what did he do? My dad said, Jason, it was easy. He gave him the recipe to the beer. He said, here, you can have it. It doesn't matter because I change it every week. And he survived the Holocaust and ultimately became a very famous chemist in the U.S. and the U.S. ambassador to Hungary because he innovated, because he reinvented his model. And I say to you, it is time for us in corporate America to reinvent our beer, to innovate. So I want you to be the Uncle Emmanuels of the social sector and help us solve cancer. Thank you very much. I think we have a few minutes if anyone has questions. Yes? So please ask them. And then also on the way out, we have free books for everybody on my newest book. And all the proceeds go to charity, by the way. So there's nothing in this. I really just want you to learn what's going on there. Any questions on your mind about beer or social innovation? Stunned. We are stunned. We're not stunned. Yes, sir. I'm stunned by the lights.
Thanks. We've been working on public policies around tobacco use. We wanted to increase the tax on tobacco so that fewer kids would smoke. We passed a clean indoor air law and worked hard on that. And my CEO's all for it. He's getting an award in the other breakfast right now. But when I talk to our chief sales guy, he's saying, well, that's great, Mark, but you're raising all boats here. You're helping our competitors with their smoking rates going down, our smoking rates going down because of these things we do, but so are our competitors. Sometimes it seems like competition sort of gets in the way of doing social good, and I wonder if you've sort of seen that or have solutions for that. That's a great question. The same question came up with a steel company I was talking to, one of the biggest steel companies, and they said, well, if we train underprivileged people to become workers and help them pipeline talent into the industry, a lot of those workers aren't going to come work at our steel company. They're going to go work at another steel company. So how do we convince our company to invest in this talent? Same thing with engineers. What if they don't work at Boeing? Two answers to that. One, if you look at a company like Travelers Insurance, they've invested in, they had a big problem, which is they can't find minority insurance agents, and they got to sell more policies to people in that demographic. So they created the Finance and Insurance Academy in Hartford. Instead of just dumping money into the public schools, they created an academy that would pipeline talent straight into Travelers. Because no one, when they're in high school, says, I want to be an insurance agent when I grow up. So they partnered with other insurance companies in Hartford to invest in that academy. They made the lead investment, but the fact is, they knew that it would benefit everyone, so because it's benefiting everyone, they went out and got everyone else to invest in it too. So one thing is, if you have a free rider problem, you might as well get everybody else to pay to be on the bus. But the second thing is you can design programs to specifically benefit you as well. And there are, cause marketing is one simple way, but there are ways potentially to show that you, by insuring certain companies, and you're going to add
sort of cancer readiness or cancer preparedness to the insurance policy as a benefit to all of the companies, you get a competitive advantage over all your other competitors, because companies realize, and you can show them the ROI that they're going to get from not only getting your policy, but from getting these free services from your firm. And oh, by the way, you're helping solve a social problem as well. But you're tailoring your strategy to specifically benefit your business. So I think those are two responses.
What company do you think is measuring social innovation best right now?
What company is measuring social innovation the best? I think that's a great question. I answer it in this way. Well, I'll give you a straight answer, and then I'll give you my other answer. The straight answer is I think General Electric and I think IBM are doing a great job. I think Cisco is doing a great job. And I actually think Walmart is doing a really great job. So one of the things that we helped them do was so they just committed $2 billion to hunger. But we had to build a business case for them to show Mike Duke and their CEO why they should care. And we showed we actually did the research to show which demographics, we did market research with those demographics, asked them would it change their behavior, and if we got a 1% change in behavior, which we didn't make up, we actually quantitatively researched and found that X% would change their behavior if they were able to engage around this social issue with the company. It would generate this much in revenue, it would generate this much in lower employee turnover. And so we did that market research, we got the quantitative data, and we made the business case. We also created some interesting proxies for them. For example, it wasn't just about giving money to hunger, but if you put a Walmart in an inner city, and if we were to fully stock the food bank, and if we were to sign people up for food stamps at Walmart, because we know 1/3 of people eligible don't receive that benefit, and if we were to use our logistics to support the food distribution and the food pantries around there, and if we were to get kids to sign up for free and reduced lunch through our philanthropy, that we could effectively create hunger-free zones within a 20-mile radius of any Walmart. And then we did the research to show across the country that the propinquity of Walmarts was closer to the incidence of hunger and security than most of the food banks were. So that they could actually effectively eradicate hunger if they rolled this strategy out. So the metrics weren't just how many dollars should we give to hunger, but how many hunger-free zones were we creating. Things like that were creative, what I call smart proxies for the higher value outcomes. So I think there's social indicators, and then, frankly, the best business metrics are the ones that the business already uses, but doing the research to show the link between your strategy and what we're doing and the actual business metrics that the company already cares about today. Okay, come talk to me afterwards. I'll be around. Thank you very much.